Hello everyone, welcome to Gate Knowledge CSE. So let's start with the next topic, that is ER models. Now, in the previous video we learned about what is the importance of database. Now, if we have to explain to someone that how is a huge amount of data, the GBs of data stored in the database, what are the types of data, how are they related, right? So what is basically the structure of the database. So if I have to explain it to someone, then I will need some model representation, correct? So there are three types of models that represent the data stored in the database. The first type of model is high level model or conceptual view. So this model gives us the high level overview of the data which is stored in the database. Okay. So the model which is used to explain the high level data abstractions of the database is nothing but ER model. Now the very next question is, what is a ER model? E stands for entity and R stands for relationship. So, ER model is a model which explains the relationship between the two entities which are stored in the database. So, now the question comes, what is an entity? What is a relationship? What are the different properties involved in this data model? So, let's dive one step deeper into this. Okay. So, let us understand what entity is. Entity is nothing but any real world object. Okay, any real world object is called as an entity. It must have some existence in your real world. So let me just write that. Any real world object. Now you can think of any real world object. Maybe your favorite car is an entity, teacher, employee. So all of this constitutes the entity. Okay. So the next question that comes is, what is a relationship, right? So the association between two entities is called as a relation. Now let us understand this a little deeper. Okay, so let us consider the entity manager. So in your ER model, you represent the entity inside a rectangular box. Manager, I have another entity, department. Now I have two entities in my database. Now I have to explain to a third person that I have stored the details of managers, I have stored the details of department, right? Now what is the relation between these two? Why am I storing it together? In the first video I told the word related, right? Database has related data together. So the question that comes is, what is the relation between these two? Why am I storing these two in the same database? So I have to define a relation. So relation in database, relation in ER model is represented as a diamond. And inside this, I write a relation. Manages. Manager manages department. Okay. So this is the relation between the two entities. So now I can say I have a database which has the details of the entity manager. There can be like three managers and there can be three departments or four departments. Okay. So maybe manager 1 manages department 1, 2 manages department 2, and manager 3 manages department 3 and 4 both. Okay, so I will tell that my database has these two entities and it has the relation of managers. That is, it gives me the information of which manager manages which department. So this is the brief introduction of your ER model. That is entity relationship model. Okay. Now let us move on to the next topic. Let us dive a little deeper into the different types of entities. So now you know what entity is, what relationship is. Now let us understand the different types of entities. So the first type of entity is strong entity. The second type is, you can guess it, weak entity. Now this is a very interesting concept. Now let me take an entity, employee. So we all know the meaning of employee. Employee works for a company, right? We all know the meaning of the entity employee. Now let me define a relation, has. The next entity is dependent. Okay. So this entity describes the dependence on the employee. Now suppose there is an employee, Ranga, who is working for a XYZ company. Now, who are his dependents? Maybe his mother, his kids, his wife. They are all his dependents. Correct? They all depend on him. So, the company maintains the dependent data. Maybe they can use that data to leverage any insurance, medical insurance, or anything. Okay? So, they have the list of dependents of the employee. Now, why does this information exist? Because Ranga is working in the company. Now, if Ranga changes the company, okay, if Ranga changes the company, then I will remove his record from the database, correct? Because he no more is working for my company. So, what would happen? I would also remove the data of his mother, wife, and kids. So, this entity is dependent on this entity, right? So the entity which is dependent is called as weak entity, and this entity is called as strong entity. Now just because the name of the entity is dependent doesn't mean it is weak entity. Okay, weak entities are those entities which are dependent on another entity. Okay, so don't confuse with the fact that the name of the entity is dependent, so it is a weak entity. Okay, now how do you represent weak entity? Okay, you represent it with a double mark. Okay, a double rectangle and a double diamond. So if my relationship has a double border, then it means that it is representing the relationship of a strong entity with a weak entity. And if my entity has a double border, it means this is my weak entity. Okay? So this relation which identifies the weak entity is called as identifying relation. And this entity which is involved in the identifying relationship, the strong entity which is involved in the identifying relationship to a weak entity is called as identifying entity. So I hope things are clear between strong entity, weak entity. Now, this is your gate question. How do you identify that it is a weak relationship? How do you identify in a ER model that this is a weak relationship? And you were given four options, and one of the option was having a diamond with a double bonder is a way of identifying that it is a weak relation. Okay, so that was the right answer. So we have covered one gate question here. Okay, so this is about your entity.